Hello, and welcome to Looking Up, A View from the Valley. My name is Mark Weissman, and thank you very, very much for watching. I'm very excited about this brand new television show that will hopefully be educational and informative for the entire family. If you have any comments on the show, feel free to provide feedback, questions, or suggestions to lookingupvalley@gmail.com or check out our Facebook page and dedicated website. Thank you very much. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Looking Up, A View from the Valley. Today we're here with Shawn Fields. You may remember him. He is director of the Huntington Branch Library in Shelton. Thanks for coming back today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And one of the things Shawn had agreed to do was a periodic book and or movie review. So Shawn's been nice enough to come back, and we'll be reviewing a book and a DVD today. Is that right?
We are.
Okay, well, which did you want to start off with first?
Well, I think we mentioned it on our program that we did about the Shelton Library System. We are in the midst of our One Book, One City program, where we're trying to get every citizen in Shelton to read J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. And we are able to do that because of a grant from the Valley Community Foundation. We had our big kickoff the other night. We had 163 people.
Wow.
It was crazy.
That's great.
So, appropriately, I have a copy here of The Hobbit. And this is the exact edition that we are giving out free to citizens of Shelton. And actually, at the Huntington branch, we're almost through these already.
Okay.
And you can also pick these up at the Plum Memorial Library, as well as Written Words Bookstore, which is up in the White Hills.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. When was this book written?
1937.
Really?
John Ronald Reuel Tolkien was a professor. He was actually at Oxford at that point. And he sat down in his office to grade some papers. And he got to one of the students' pieces, and there was a blank page there. And it just popped into his head. He kind of looked down, and he saw a hole in the carpet. And he said, "In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit."
It just came to him like
and he
that?
started right. Well,
Wow.
he had been telling stories to his children that were kind of along the lines of what he would end up using for this book. And he was inspired, as everybody else is, by some prior works in the realm of, fairies and little people and adventures and that kind of thing.
Right.
So he just started putting it together, and he was such a perfectionist that it took him a long time to really put all the pieces together. So he had really been kind of thinking about these stories and so forth since 1922.
Okay.
But really what he wanted to do was create a unique mythology just for England.
Oh, okay.
He was born in South Africa, but he was very into England. They moved back there when he was a child, and he was really involved in a lot of the Norse mythology, and he both studied and taught some of the items like the Icelandic Eddas and so forth. And he thought, boy, all these cultures have these unique mythologies, and England does not have one. So really his overarching goal was to make this new mythology. And you didn't really read those pieces that he created until much long after this was published.
Oh, okay.
So he
Was this the first novel he ever published?
Yeah, this was the first thing that, he had published papers and things, obviously,
right,
but this was really the first book. And they sent this to the publisher, and the publisher gave it to his young son. And the son wrote a book report, and of course the family and the estate has this book report that he gave, and he gave it a passing grade, so they published it, and they ran through the first edition, the first publishing, in just a couple of weeks.
Wow.
So they knew they had gold with this, and so that, obviously they kept printing more runs of it,
Sure.
and they printed it in the United States the year after that. And then they asked him to write a sequel, because the publisher naturally was making a lot of money on it. They wanted more Hobbit stories and so forth. So they said, come up with something else. Well, he turned in a piece that was about really the mythology. It ended up being the Silmarillion, which came out much, much later.
Okay.
Actually, I think they didn't publish it in this country until the 70s. But it started with the real creation myth and all the gods and deities and, angel-like creatures and so forth. So the publisher didn't really go for that. And they said, no, you have to go back to the drawing board. We want another Hobbit story. So he sat down and he ended up writing The Lord of the Rings.
Right.
But it didn't get published until 1954. That's how long it took him, because he
Wow.
would go over every single word over and over
So the
again.
Lord of the Rings is actually the sequel, not the
Really,
original.
that's the sequel.
Oh, I actually for some reason thought it was the other way around.
Nope, this is what started it.
Oh, okay.
And it's pretty interesting, because he went back into this a couple of times and revised, some of the phrasing, some of the terms
Right.
to match his later work a little bit. Kind of like what George Lucas does with
Right.
Star Wars. Every time he puts it out, he changes something, and he
Sure,
was kind of doing
sure.
that too. He's a true perfectionist.
Well,
But-
actually, well, it's interesting you mentioned him because he released the initial Star Wars episodes and then kind of took a step back and went back earlier in the I guess a prequel he wrote.
Yeah. Well, but with his case, he always wanted to do that other trilogy, but
Okay.
he just didn't feel that he had the technological capability
Oh,
to pull it
okay.
off.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so that's why they waited so
So-
long to
so-
go back into it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Now, did J.R.R. Tolkien ever do something like that, where he, in other words, how old is the Hobbit, if there's an age, sort of designated with it, when this book is written? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, it's meant to be kind of a time before time sort of thing.
Oh, okay,
that,
okay.
that in his mythology, he basically writes about 4 ages of the earth, and this is in the I think it's in the 3rd age still. So there's really no time, and a lot of scholars like to look into literature and find themes, and he had fought in the First World War. So they wanted to say that the bad guys were the Germans in this,
I see,
and the
right.
and the map of Middle Earth was
kind of like
Europe.
Animal Farm, that kind
Yeah,
of
that
thing.
kind of
sure.
stuff. And he hated all of that.
Yeah.
He hated reading into it. He said it's not alliterative at all.
Right.
There's no allegory in this. It's just a straight up story. He was a deeply religious person. He was actually Catholic in a country that was very staunchly Anglican, and that caused him and his family a lot of issues. So he tried to put in all these themes of pilgrimage and the quest and life-changing events and that kind of thing in it. But it's basically a book about good and evil, greed, that kind of thing.
Right, okay.
So it's about a hobbit, which is kind of like a short dwarf type person. Mostly they're human. And he modeled the main character, Bilbo Baggins, which he originally called Bingo. I'm glad he made the change. After himself. They're kind of meant to be almost like Englishmen. They're kind of a little rotund. They enjoy their tea and eating and being in their nice, clean, warm, cozy hobbit holes. And Bilbo especially, he's not interested in adventures. He doesn't like anything untoward. And one day his wizard friend shows up and tells him, guess what? You're going on an adventure with a bunch of dwarves. And you're going to follow them out to this place called the Lonely Mountain, where they're going to reclaim their kingdom and their treasure that's been buried under this mountain and is currently under the control of a dragon.
Now, something like, I guess when you say dwarves, I think of like a leprechaun, which has Irish sort of connotations.
Yeah.
Did the Hobbit have any sort of either ethnic or religious sort of content? Was it based on some sort of a particular country or a particular religion?
Well, it's about, it's really England.
It is.
He loves the English countryside, and so the concept of the little people he uses for the hobbits. And the dwarves are a different version of the little people. The dwarves are very industrious. They're into mining and smithies and that kind of thing.
Right.
And they're kind of fiery.
Okay.
They're quick to anger and to take offense, and also their women are bearded as well. So you can never find a female dwarf because they look the same.
Interesting. Now, are they considered to be evil or good ultimately?
No, they usually are good, but he has the concept, the Christian concept. Well, it's a concept obviously that predates Christianity, but there's good and evil. So in his world, there is a fallen angel, like the character of Lucifer is played by this creature called Morgoth.
Right.
And so in the earlier ages of the earth, they banish him, but his evil still lingers. So that character of Sauron, which you're probably familiar with from The Lord of the Rings, even if you've just watched the movies, is one of the lieutenants of this source of evil. So every creature in his books can be good or evil, or both at the same time. You have even elves, which are one of the earliest races on the Middle Earth.
Right.
Can succumb to greed and lust and anger and that kind of thing under the influence of the evil generated by Morgoth. So, so the dwarves are generally, they would count it on as being good guys, but they're greedy. They're reclaiming their kingdom, and I don't want to tell you too much about the book, but they get into conflict because once they get their treasure, it's their treasure, and they're not going to share with anybody, and it's their kingdom. But if you're fast friends with them, they do a lot of great things for you. So it's really about Bilbo and his kind of awakening, the opening of his eyes to the greater world outside of the Shire, which is where the hobbits live, and him getting used to, he's the burglar of the group. He's meant to be quick and fast and small and silent and to slip into these places to check things out for the dwarves. So he becomes the main protagonist. And along the way, it's not a spoiler here because, so the movies for The Lord of the Rings have been out for years, but he finds the One Ring. Sauron fashions the One Ring, which is the Ring of Power, and it controls all of the other rings that he made and basically gives him a lot of great power over Middle-earth. So he happens to find this One Ring found in a dank, dark cave in the middle of this mountain, which is being kind of lorded over by the creature called Gollum. So he manages to find this, and he takes off with it, and that leads to the larger story in The Lord of the Rings.
Well, that sounds really good. Now, getting back to Tolkien, do you know roughly how old he was when he wrote this?
I don't remember the exact date of his birth. He was born in the late 19th century. He was a young man when he fought in World War I. So I would put him at about, I think he was in his 30s.
Okay. Did he ever win a Pulitzer for any of his novels?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
His main profession was being a college professor, and he did that for a long time. He died in the 70s, and it was kind of strange for him, all the fame that came from this, because he, of course, had been writing and living the way he usually did for years. When The Lord of the Rings came out is when he really became kind of a star, and there was sort of a resurgence of his popularity in the 70s.
Right. Was he alive to experience any of that?
I think he died in 72.
Okay.
If I'm remembering correctly.
So it was probably after that, the movie.
Yeah, it started to hit a little bit, but so people would recognize him. But he he always remained true to who he was. He hated modern technology. He didn't even like to drive. He didn't drive for most of his life. He liked the kind of idyllic, bucolic countryside. And that's why the Shire, where the home of the hobbits, is like the most perfect place kind of on the Middle-earth map, because it's just nice and quiet, and they enjoy themselves, and they don't make too much of a fuss about things. And
now, a lot of the viewers, I'm sure, are familiar with Harry Potter series.
Yes.
Have you read some of those?
I have.
Have you read all of those?
Yes, I have.
Good, I'm sure you did. So my question is, either style-wise or even topic-wise or theme-wise, are there any similarities between those two, or are they pretty much their own entities to themselves?
Well, other than just the archetypal good versus evil kind of fight. Her focus was on love as the overriding power in the universe, that even this great, powerful Dark Lord of Voldemort couldn't overcome love. But really the focus is on younger people, whereas this battle of good and evil is kind of more epic.
Okay.
A much larger scale.
Would you say, but now Harry Potter, I think, was intended, again, maybe it was an all-audience thing, but it seemed to appeal to kids more so than adults, although I, like yourself, I know a lot of adults who've read it. Yeah. Would you say Lord of the Rings, though, was really written for kids?
Lord of the Rings was really, the publisher wanted it to be a sequel to The Hobbit, which is really a kid's book.
Right. I'm sorry, that's what I meant. The Hobbit was
The Hobbit's a kid's book, although, of course, in 1937, they had a much larger vocabulary that they were using. So while I don't think it's a challenging book to read, it's not, I think, as easy to read maybe as Harry Potter.
Okay.
But The Lord of the Rings was supposed to be also a kid's book, and really it's so gigantic and so involved that it's really meant for
a more mature audience.
Yeah, a more mature audience than that.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the difference between the two. And the great news is, for once, the libraries are out ahead of the curve. In December, the movie of The Hobbit is coming out, the first part. They're making two parts.
Oh, interesting.
They've been working on it for years. The delay was due to Peter Jackson, the director. Peter Jackson directed the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He was involved in this project early on, and they had kind of a falling out about some finances involving the Lord of the Rings, and he bowed out of the project, and they tried to make it without him, and it just wasn't working. So they brought him back in on the project, and now in December of this year, the movie, the first part, will come
great.
out. So
That's great.
I'm kind of interested in seeing how they do with that. A lot of the same actors are going to be back. Ian McKellen plays Gandalf the Wizard, and he's back, and so it should be pretty interesting.
Now, back to Shelton's role in getting this book out there. So what have you done so far? You're making this book available to the public? How is that
The
work?
book's available to the public, as I said, at both libraries and Written Words Bookstore, and we're having a series of events to celebrate this. We had our kickoff last week. We had magic and the characters from the book. We've transformed the main floor of the Huntington branch into Middle-earth.
Oh, wow.
So the different places that Bilbo goes, you
Right.
can visit.
Oh, that's
the
cool.
Shire and Rivendell and Mirkwood Forest.
So the
Holy Mountains.
kickoff took place at the library?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, and you can see video of some of that
okay.
on our website, on our YouTube channel now.
Okay.
So the other events coming up, we're doing a book discussion for the whole family. We're having a Meet Smaug. Smaug is the dragon in the book event. And we have a number of other things, including an End of the Road program where we're going to have a folk singer come out who does English folk songs.
Oh, wow. That's a
and
great idea.
He's kind of relating it to themes of The Hobbit with the Green Man concept.
That's great.
The one that I want to tell your viewers about, however, is we want families or friends or individuals to take pictures of themselves reading the book or video, and we want them to post it on our Facebook page, and then we're going to give out prizes. We'll name them at the End of the Road program.
Should they be dressed up as a character?
They can do whatever they want, but we think the more imaginative, the better. We're going to pick out the two best and give them prizes.
That's excellent.
So I recommend this book to you, and this is actually your copy.
Oh, thank you very much, Shawn. That's great. I will definitely read it, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Lead is very harmful. It is the leading environmental cause of illness in children.
Any house built before 1978, the lead could be anywhere. It could be on your walls, it could be on your windows, it could be on your doors.
72% of housing in the valley is pre-1978 construction.
Lived in this house for 6 years now, I think. It was built in 1922, and the whole thing is filled with lead.
If you're going to do a project in your home that's pre-78 construction, I would strongly advise you to use lead-safe work practices.
The first thing you gotta make sure that you're protecting is your kids, yourself, and your family. Containment is the biggest thing, taking the dust and making sure that it does not get to any other surface in the house. Make sure that you protect yourself from lead dust working in a containment unit. The next best thing is to work wet, never sand dry. And then the last thing is to make sure that you clean very well.
By you're doing a home renovation project, lead safe, you're protecting the minds of your children and their ability to thrive in the future.
And remember,
don't spread lead.
Okay, let's move along. Now we've got DVD we'll cover. Which one do you have today?
Quite a different topic from what we've been talking about. This movie is called Melancholia. It's put out by a studio called Magnolia. They're another one of these. They sort of make almost independent films, but it's by a larger studio, so they're bigger budget. This film stars Kirsten Dunst as well as Kiefer Sutherland, among others.
Right.
And I picked this one because it's kind of a strange movie. It's not what you would expect.
Okay.
We have it categorized actually as science fiction, as do a lot of places that are putting this out. And it's only sort of marginally a sci-fi movie. The concept is a rogue planet has been discovered called Melancholy. And this planet is going to pass through the solar system. And there's some debate about whether or not this will hit the Earth. And so that's kind of the backdrop, and that is really important at the beginning and the end of the story. But all the parts in between are about a crazy family. And I'm sure that most of us, especially as we're getting up to the holidays where you're going to spend time with your family, say, I think my family might be a little crazy.
That's right.
And this family has its own set of picadillos and issues. And really the centerpiece of that part of the drama is Kirsten Dunst's character is getting married. And so they're having the marriage at her sister and brother-in-law's giant English mansion. And so this rogue planet is kind of in the back of their minds, and really they're just dealing with each other. The mother is very controlling and bizarre. The father of the bride is very bizarre. And the bride herself is a manic depressive. So she's very creative. Her boss is there, and he's trying to get her to do advertising work at her own wedding. And of course, everything goes wrong with the wedding. Everybody's irritated. It takes forever. There's this whole mess, turns out. I don't want to tell you too much about it, because then you miss on it. But really, the movie is directed by Lars von Trier, who's done a lot of kind of artistic films. And this is very artsy. The first couple of scenes actually take place as the planet is approaching Earth.
Okay.
So it's in slow motion, and there's these beautiful shots of, the solar system and planets and things happening to the characters. And then it just goes to the wedding. And then about a third of the way through the movie, they go back to the planets coming close together, just for about 5 minutes, and you're saying, oh, okay. And then it goes back to the wedding. And the movie is separated into two parts. The first part is about the character Justine, which is Kirsten Dunst's character.
Right.
And then the second part is about her sister, Claire, who's played by Charlotte Gainsbourg.
Okay.
And Claire has to deal with the fallout from this wedding, and also the rising concerns about what's going to happen as this planet passes. So in some ways, it's one of these movies that you watch it and you're not sure how you feel about it. I don't know if I felt like I spent a lot of great time watching it. It was just interesting.
Okay.
The drama was interesting, and it actually was critically acclaimed.
How old is the movie? Is it a fairly new movie?
I think it came out actually in 2011.
Okay.
They just released the DVD in 2012.
Okay.
And it's one of these that it won a lot of awards at some of these, like Cannes Film
Golden
Festival.
Globe kind of thing.
Well, it wasn't even at that level. It got mentioned
really?
there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But Cannes, Kirsten Dunst won a couple of Best Actress awards. Although sometimes I don't know how I feel about those awards when I don't know her personally, but when I kind of feel like they're playing themselves, I look at it and say, "Are you really? Is it that great of an acting job? Because you seem to be just kind of manic depressive yourself, and you're just kind of playing yourself."
That's funny.
And I just, I'm not her psychologist or anything, but I gleaned that from some of her interviews about some of the movies that she's done. She always seems to be, she was in the big Spider-Man movies, and every time she spoke about them, she was kind of, it was kind of a pain for her to do them, and she wasn't really that into them, and that kind of stuff. And so I just picture that as being her real life character,
I see. Okay.
and that's her character in the movie as well.
Fine.
So.
Interesting.
So
what about Kiefer Sutherland? What's his role in the movie?
Kiefer Sutherland is the brother-in-law. He's very wealthy. He owns the mansion. He's kind of like the voice of reason, although he can be controlling himself. And he's into science, and so he's one of the major proponents that, this planet is going to fly by us. It's not going to hit us. It hasn't hit any of the other planets. And it's going to be just an amazingly beautiful thing to see. So he's getting his young son very excited about taking out the telescope and watching the planet go by and doing calculations and that kind of thing. So
I was trying to remember. He was in a science fiction, Kiefer Sutherland. He was in like a science fiction, his father was in Vision Body Snatchers, but there was another movie that he did that Scanners? Was he in Scanners?
Yeah, he was in Scanners. He's done a couple of them. They're kind of lower budget things.
I was getting confused between him and Kevin Bacon in that Worm one. Whatever that Worm movie. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. It was
it called Worms or something? Or whatever?
Holes? No.
I forget. It had a one word.
Tremors.
Tremors, that's it.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that when you were saying.
This one, Von Trier is a Swede, I believe. And so he had a couple of the Swedes in it. Peter Skarsgård is in everything now. And also, I keep forgetting his name too. He plays the bad guy in the American version of the girl with the dragon tattoo is in it too. He's a fantastic actor. Some of our users of the library are very specific when they come in. They say, if I want a book, I don't want there to be any sex in it. And if I watch a movie, I don't want any swearing or nudity and that kind of stuff.
Right.
It is R-rated because of adult language and nudity.
Okay.
And there's not really that much in it. I mean, compared with most movies, it's not.
But if somebody says no, it has some. That's the point.
Yeah, it has some in there. Yeah.
So. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and we'll look forward to your next review.
Okay.
Hopefully soon. Thanks for coming.
And you can pick this up at the library.
And Huntington or the Shelton Library.
I don't know if Pum bought this or not, but actually, you can put holds on items from other libraries.
That's right.
So
That's
there
right.
are a ton of libraries with this, and you can get on the holds list, and we'll ship it into town for you at no cost to you.
That's great.
And you can watch it at your leisure.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so
All right.
much, Shawn. I appreciate
Thanks.
it. Hopefully we'll come back again and do some more. This is great.
Yes.
So this has been Shawn Fields from the Huntington Branch Library with his review of DVD and book for us. So thank you for watching, and have a good day.
So the river race, though, brought out, the first year they did it, it brought out 400 canoes and kayaks,
Really?
as well as
tri-state area.
Wow.
It's unreal.
people on
Where do you
rafts
guys,
and
where, if
platforms.
someone wants to do that, where can they find information?
Well,
on what to do
online
there?
you can look up the Naugatuck River Race. I think it's called Naugatuck River Revival. It starts in Waterbury at Platts Mill Road, and,
Okay.
and it ends in Beacon Falls.
Oh, okay.
At the steel
It's
bridge.
about 6.5
Really?
miles on the river. It's
Wow.
it's amazing. It's a clean. There's salmon in that river. There's what else in that river? There's
Lots of fish.
lots of fish, and the people fish in there. They have musicians on the side of the river.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, do you do
playing accordion
that?
and
Or
so
if
on.
you do actually, so it's considered the Naugatuck
River
activity,
race, it is.
Even though it takes place from Waterbury to
It's,
Beacon Falls?
it's the Naugatuck River Race is what it's called.
Right,
And
right.
it's what they do is at the landing in Beacon Falls they have bands there and food and
Oh, wow.
everything.
When is this held?
And it's in May usually.
Didn't we have the trophy for a while in Naugatuck Borough Town Hall?
Tom
Wow.
and I were hyper competitive about it.
Right.
We would drink a lot of espresso and vitamin juice or something,
Right,
and then
right.
we would just plow out of there and push people out of our way. It was just a mad scene for a couple of years.
Have you ever thought about expanding it beyond, like below?
We
Beacon
have,
Falls?
and again, the non, all joking aside, part of that, again, it's an economic driver. It's
Right,
an event.
right.
We had people, remember we spoke to some people from Syracuse. We were
Right.
like, how did they end up here? And they're like, oh, we heard about it, we came here.
Right.
And again, we're thinking from that standpoint, a couple of well-positioned events a year,
Right.
now all of a sudden create a draw for your community.
Right.
That, plus when they get here, they have someplace to go.
Absolutely.
They have a walkable community. They have a very friendly community with some history to it.
Of course.
And now all of a sudden you've reinvigorated an area.
If you have any comments on the show, feel free to provide feedback, questions, or suggestions to lookingupvalley@gmail.com or check out our Facebook page and dedicated website. Thank you very much.